What's up, guys? I am excited about today. You want to know why I'm excited? Because today in America, it's the 4th of July. I don't know if you looked at your calendar. It's for most of you, if you're watching live, it's summertime, and 4th of July is like any other day in the summertime, right? Except there's loud noises at the end of the day where you get to blow things up at the end of the day. Hopefully only fireworks. Don't blow up things like mailboxes or anything more intense of that nature. So today's a big day. Today's a big day for those in America. Certainly, there may be listeners that are not in America, and that's totally cool. I encourage you to still listen to this episode. Maybe you'll get something out of it that even correlates with your own country history and how your country became independent. So, but this is a big day, and I want to add weight. I want to add weight to not only present day 4th of July and kind of what it means present day, but I want to go back. I want to go back a little bit, and this by no means is going to be a history lesson. This is going to be what I know and what I emphasize and focus on when I think of 4th of July. So certainly if you are a student, high school, college, ask your teachers. Now, you're not in school right now, hopefully. If you're in summer school, I don't know, stick with it, man. But you probably aren't in a position right now, if you're watching live, to talk to your teachers. But 4th of July is a big deal. It's a huge deal. We wouldn't be here in America if it weren't for the 4th of July. So I want to go back a little bit, and I'm going to read the Declaration of Independence. So for those of you who simply forget what the 4th of July is even about, we have two main doctrines in America. We have the Constitution, which sets the federal boundaries on what the federal government can and can't do, essentially. Certainly, there's still bills and laws that get passed and all that. This isn't a lesson on that. But the Constitution sets the parameters, which is a huge idea. Go back 300, 400 years. I mean, it necessarily wasn't common for a country to have a written doctrine on what the government can and can't do. Because government is force. And I'm not going to get into that necessarily. There's some books, both long and short books, that I may touch on in future shows. But government is force, and when you are the strongest thing around, it's easy to believe you can do whatever you want. Government is force. And so throughout history, governments have basically done whatever they want because they can. Why argue when you control the police force or the army or the defense? But this idea, and again, I'm talking about Constitution here for a second. That's not what the 4th of July is about. But that's what the Constitution essentially does, that we ratified, after we made the Articles of Confederation, after we won the Revolutionary War with Britain. That happened after. But the Declaration of Independence, which I want to talk about today, the Declaration of Independence was ratified. It's the coolest thing. It was ratified really before we even went at war with Britain. I mean, we were sort of at war. That's a whole, and I'm going to get into that a little bit. This is going to be a short podcast. I'm just kind of rolling into it. No intro. This is episode 8. This is going to be a little shorter podcast, and I just want to add weight. It's really neat. But the Declaration of Independence was ratified. All right, got low battery on the iPad. I should be able to close this thing out before the iPad burns. The Declaration of Independence was ratified without permission, you know what I mean? We just said we are independent. And I think that is one of the most amazing things about our history. And I kind of hesitated to even want to say this statement, but I think I'll say it. I'll probably say it again in future shows because I think it's a powerful statement when it comes to the history of our country. But I believe that our past will save our future. And the sacrifices and the boldness of those of our founding fathers, those that have defended our nation, the heroes of the past, both big heroes and small, I believe that their sacrifices, we can't undo what they did. I mean, the great things that they did for our country to make our country a country can't be undone. It just is what it is. The only thing that can make it lose its power is if we forget. if we forget what they did and we decide that what they did is not valuable, that what they did doesn't carry weight. So I want to add weight. So I want you to kind of think, let's kind of go back to the Declaration of Independence time frame, 1776 time frame. So it was written July 2nd, it was ratified July 4th. That's why we celebrate July 4th as our Independence Day. So, and I'm going to get to kind of a few main points. So this is context. So, and then I'm going to read the Declaration of Independence. But a little bit of background. So there was a lot of tension between America and Great Britain at the time. Taxation, obviously taxation with no representation was a big deal. And there was a lot of philosophy. Specifically, I'll just name John Locke. You can look him up. John Locke as a huge ideological big name in that time frame. Philosophy, political philosophy, natural law, and you're going to hear that in the Declaration of Independence. Natural law and law that was inherent, that there were inherent rights in humans and that rights came from a creator and not from a government was a huge idea. I'm no sociology expert, I'm no history expert, but we might have been the first country that really made that the law of the land, that put the power in the people and not the government. And that's huge. That takes a lot of trust too. It takes a lot of trust to say that people have the power, not government, because it's always people's natural bent to want to control, especially whenever you have been elected a government official. Just kind of makes sense. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. When you've been elected, you feel responsible for the welfare of the people, and it's natural for people in government to want to control every little in and out. Now, that simply doesn't really work, and America has really led the way in taking control away from the government. But we have so many political fights today, and many of you are somewhat aware of them. If you're in high school and you're in college, you generally know. You don't know everything. I don't know everything, but you know a lot of the ins and outs. You know a little bit about right wing, left wing, conservative versus liberal or progressive. All these labels, which I'm not going to get into politics much because I really want to dig into this history stuff. I'm not going to get into politics much, but I will say be open-minded, and that both sides on any political coin probably agree on 90% of things. It's just that maybe 10%, and there's certainly fundamental differences that are kind of a big deal. But as far as wanting to do good for our nation and for our people, I think everyone kind of rallies around that. So we're all on the same side. I think it's just funny and rather immature how adults, politicians can argue amongst one another. There's some good things in it, but there's a lot to it. So without further ado, let me read. So I've got this little booklet that has the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. I got this in college. I was pretty involved in some political clubs. Actually, not many people really know. I was also an honors fellow for an organization called the Intercollegiate Studies Institute. A little plug there. Check them out if you're in college. I can't spend enough time on them to do them justice, but great organization toward conservative principles, meaning conserving the principles of the Founding Fathers and our nation's history. And so I was a fellow, so I was involved. I got to go to these conferences with all these like Harvard and Yale students who were philosophy and history majors, and I was like Bilbo Jones from South Carolina Military College who just wanted to go on these conferences and work out half the time. So, but I had a good time. I learned a lot, and definitely I'm a very opinionated person, so I got to voice some opinions, and we had fun. So I learned a lot. Every conference that I went to, I probably went to maybe 6 conferences. They were anywhere from a weekend to a week long. Whenever I went to these conferences, you have to read all these references from when America was becoming a country and what influences really made America what America is. And so really neat things to study. So I'm not well versed in all of it as much as I was. But anywho, it doesn't take a lot of skills for me to read the Declaration of Independence. So I'm going to read it, and I'm going to give a little bit of narrative to it. And again, this is intended to be a short podcast. So, all right, let's give it a shot. Action of Second Continental Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience hath shewn that mankind are more disposed to suffer where evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object of establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, and state the remaining in the meantime, exposing to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of land. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He is elected to render the military independent and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. And then going forward, quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders when they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us with our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is, at this time, transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy, scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against our country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections against us and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant, is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. And then it's signed by roughly 4 representatives from each state. And it's easy to forget what all went into that Declaration of Independence. And I want to harp on a few points. And first I want to add weight to those that signed it back in the day, to those that signed it. So think about this. The most powerful country in the world is supposed to be on your side. You know, it's tough to think about this being in America, but the most powerful country is supposed to be on our side. We are supposed to be protected by them. But actually the most powerful government, military, navy in the world is actually creating unfair laws toward us and killing us if we don't abide by them. And you and 50 other people say we've had enough. And you tell that country and that navy and army, who have thousands of people that are obedient to the crown, who, when you put your name on that document, those people that signed the Declaration of Independence, they are saying they were committing treason at that time. They were committing treason in the highest order. That is in the highest order of treason. This country was created basically out of treason, but out of justified treason because of the philosophy of that day, because of John Locke and the political and economic philosophies that were coming to a head in that time of Adam Smith and the Wealth of Nations. And everything just came together. Everything just came to a head with abuses by Great Britain and culture in America becoming what it was. And what really it kind of still is. I think we will forever have a little bit of, I don't want to call it disobedience, but a little bit of a desire to own our future. To own our future here in America. We have that intercultural DNA. We always have. You know, whenever people want to do their own thing, create their own businesses, want the government to stay out of their lives, that's not just a recent phenomenon. That's what our country was founded on. Not only in 1776 when we declared independence, but I mean, I have to believe that whenever we created the charters in the first place, you know, because we were colonies for a while before we became a country. But the charters, you know, some of you go to a charter school, so you probably kind of know what that means. And, you know, even just creating the charter colonies was exciting. Because there had to be a reason. Think about that. Why would you go across a vast ocean where you don't even know really where the next body of land is? You know, if you're, you know, we celebrate Columbus, whoever, the people of that day that came over to America. You know, if you were Columbus, you wouldn't just go if there wasn't something in it for you. You went because you got to extract whatever resources, you got to create your own place, your own city, town. You got to create your own future. And you got to own it. You know, you got to own it. You got the benefits of the protection from those that funded the trip, those that helped really establish the colonies, but you got to own it. So that's been in our DNA from colony time to early America time. But I want to add some weight. Man, that was courage. That was huge. And so, you know, you've probably heard John Hancock, you know, for signing larger than anyone else on the Declaration of Independence. You know, maybe I'll throw up kind of a picture of the Declaration of Independence. You can Google image it or whatever too. And, you know, he signed it way larger than everybody else. And you know, hundreds of years later, we still talk about him because that took so much guts. That took so much guts. He was saying, "Come find me, Great Britain. You know, come find me because I'm not going to put up with what, you know, the abominations that you're doing anymore." And they were committing treason in the highest order, declaring independence. And so I want to also say this because it's applicable to today. Demonstrating courage and making declarations is very applicable today. Now, you're probably not declaring you are free from a tyranny. Maybe you live under the law of your parents, middle school, high school, and you feel like you're under tyranny. Okay, I get it. Okay, you're probably not going to be able to declare independence from that, or declare declare anything in that way. But certainly, if not by now, at some point, you're going to make a declaration about something. You're going to make a declaration about what you believe in, about what you stand for. You're going to make a declaration that you're going to live in love for another person when you get married. Whenever, I guess, you have kids, you're going to make a declaration probably to somebody that you're going to love and take care of them. And declaration is an interesting thing. At some point, I'll probably talk more in depth about that. I still want this to be more about the Declaration of Independence and what it means. But making a declaration usually means you got to fight for the results. Usually you don't declare things that are obvious. You know, usually you don't declare the sky is blue. The sky is blue. It's blue, guys. Because people look up and they're like, yeah, bro, we know. We can look up too. Usually when you declare things, there's a little bit of pushback somehow. You know, if you declare that you're a Christ follower, if you're into that kind of faith, or some other kind of faith. Usually you have to declare it, and there's going to be pushback. There's if you're joining a school or a team, getting drafted, who knows, and you have to declare your intent to join this team, or declare what you intend to do, where you intend to go. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It could even take your life. Whenever I signed up, not that racing is anywhere as close to war or anything like that, but whenever I sign up for races, I'm declaring I'm going to compete in this race when I sign up, and I pay for a marathon. Maybe it's $150. For an Ironman, maybe it's $700. I'm declaring I'm going to compete in this race one way or another. I'm going to do what I need to do. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be a long road. And I don't even know how it's going to end up, And we all have to make declarations at some point. You can't live your life without making a declaration. You have to stand for something. And you don't necessarily have to proclaim it to the world. You could just declare it to yourself. And declaration and faith are very closely linked, I think, because they're both sort of looking into the future, creating a future, an optimal future, a future that they want to see. So these founding fathers that signed this Declaration of Independence on behalf of an entire nation, and that took a lot. That took a lot. I mean, you can't just declare independence lightly, because there were expected benefits. As a colony of Great Britain, you expected to get protection from their government, not abuse from their government and their military. And there were supposed to be benefits prior to the Declaration of Independence. And they were unafraid. I'm sure they faced fear, but courage isn't necessarily not feeling fear. Courage is feeling fear and acting anyway. And they demonstrated a lot of courage to declare independence, no matter the consequences. I mean, they were all in. I mean, we talk about, maybe you watch poker on ESPN or something. I think that's still playing. And people go all in. And maybe there's a lot to that. They're putting a lot of finances into the game, and they could lose it all. Well, this is a different kind of all in. This is probably the biggest all in that human history has ever seen. That 13 colonies way over here in not even a country, America, could declare independence and fight and win independence from what was at that time the greatest superpower in the world. That is huge. That is huge, and that's forward thinking. I mean, read the Declaration of Independence again, and the narrative is so forward thinking, and we often forget the basis on what gave them the courage, the philosophy of the day, the natural laws, the rights, and they knew that if they didn't tighten it up at that time, that human history in the course of history to this day would look totally different. It looked totally different. Their actions, 250 years ago, changed the course and created the ability for us to live today. I mean, we wouldn't be here. Not only would America probably wouldn't look like it does today in the strictest sense. It may look similar to some extent, but America wouldn't be what it is today. We may not even be here. Someone at some point in the chain of our parental tree may not have even found each other, and we wouldn't have even been born. It'd be a totally different present, be a totally different world. And the same can be true today. You can declare things both large and small for yourself, for your family, for your friends, for your school, for your community. You can declare, we're not going to put up with this crap anymore, whatever that looks like. Every school is different. Your school may be awesome. Your family may be awesome. Your community may be awesome. I'm not in school, but I certainly love the community that I live in. I love my state, love my country, and I'm not saying it's all bad. We are blessed beyond belief. It's incredible. And this is a reminder of how blessed we are. But we have to carry the torch forward. And you may be so young that you're just starting to maybe try to understand the bigger picture of the Declaration of Independence. And you may be of an age where you may even be ready to commit to join the military or something of that nature, which is great. And whether that's you, that describes you, or you're somewhere you just want to be a good citizen and contribute to the world, it is up to us to carry the torch. Maybe not necessarily fully to carry the torch now. Maybe you're in a preparation stage right now. But the torch and the baton will be passed to you at some point. And I'm telling you, adults who sort of have the torch right now, or who maybe want to have the torch, they may not be the ones that should have the torch to carry us forward. I'm astonished sometimes at the direction that our culture and our country is going. But I firmly believe, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it on future shows, I firmly believe that our past will save our future. And so honor the past, honor the courage of our founding fathers, and learn. Look into John Locke. Look into the ideological philosophies of that day that were changing how people thought, how people looked at the world, how people looked at government. And I think you'll be surprised at what we are tolerating in our country, the attitudes and the beliefs. So honor them. Honor their declaration. Remember this day, the independence that we get to enjoy, to spend money to blow up fireworks with pretty colors and loud noises, and more or less do what we want, so long as we are not abridging someone else's rights and property, and we get to live a blessed life. It may not be a perfect life, but it is a blessed life. If you're in America, you are blessed. This is your past. The Declaration of Independence, it is your past, just like it's my past, just like it's your parents' past. This is our cultural past, and remember it, honor it, carry it forward. That's our duty. So I'm excited. Let's go celebrate, man. Let's do it. Let's eat some hot dogs and burgers. If you like this video, please support by subscribing on iTunes, leaving a review, and sharing with your friends.